Thank you so much. Yes, a warm welcome to Safe Social. Yes, we are going to debate. Well, we debate a lot about the fact that few companies control much of the network. The need and the longing for better places on the net is larger than ever. But why does the Fediverse receive so little traction? What can we change about that, and how can we achieve more momentum? These are the issues that the campaign Safe Social, that is working on, and I will discuss these together with Franziska Heine, who since 2022 is the executive CEO of Wikimedia. Since 2025 is the only one. The co-founder of Republica and Netzpolitik.org, Markus Beckedahl, also the founder of the organization for Fundamental Rights and Democracy, and Marc-Uwe Kling, author of the Kangaroo books and of a new book that he published together with someone from his family. And we'll start with a reading by Marc-Uwe Kling. A warm welcome to you. Right. I was asked whether I could do something for this, and I don't have so much to say about it, but the kangaroo has a lot to say about it. Listen up. The kangaroo comes to me in the kitchen and says, Elon Musk on his personal propaganda platform has again compared himself to the Rebel Alliance on Star Wars, and someone answered, you are the wealthiest person in the world, you are the unelected shadow president, how can you believe that you are the Rebel Alliance, you are the empire? I used someone, I asked tiredly and lifted my head off the table that it was lying on since I got into the kitchen in the morning. Irrelevant. The important thing is this nails it down. Big tech likes to act as the rebels, but for such a long time they have been the empire. Wow, I say. Now that is an opener. I believe that this now turned into a longer tirade. Absolutely. Belt up. And, well, actually, for situations like that, I have actually installed a seatbelt at the kitchen chair that I'm now taking out and clicking in. And I believe you are now going to prohibit certain things. Au contraire, mon cher, replies the kangaroo. I'm not going to fall into that trap. I don't want the tech oligarchy to call me a censorship advocate. No, I'm not going to ban anything. The platforms are those that ban things, that wall things, that restrict things. I want to allow things. Okay, I'm curious now. You have my full attention. Okay, start with something that you will very much like, a no-brainer. Well, yeah, actually, that is what I like in the morning. Outlinks. What? It sounds like a title like a great new science fiction series on Paramount Plus that no one's watching because no one has no Paramount Plus. Sounds like an old ChatGPT prompt of someone from the left party, I say. Dear AI, is it out to vote for the left, which is out links? And what was the answer? Well, make sure that the Putin friends split away from you and then be the only one in the election campaign that doesn't talk about immigration the whole time, but the core of your brand, probably. We're digressing. That is what links are about, or maybe the left. Have you noticed that most of the large platforms will replace links leading out of the platform or punish them with less reach? Of course. And are you going to ban this? No. Yeah, I ban links. I want to allow them. To ban a ban is to allow. Haven't you paid attention? The kangaroo takes away my smartphone that has wandered into my hand without my doing and opened TikTok to marinate my brain in brown sauce. And as soon as I stop looking at the display, I feel much better. Anyway, the digital oligarchs lock us into the data silos, says the kangaroo. That secures their monopolies and the death of real journalism and proper media, because this desperate fight for the last crumbs of attention, where big tech supplies the content free and where they can't even link into their own platforms. Compared to the large platforms, all the rest of the internet is turned into a digital graveyard that no one's visiting. They suck up all the traffic and all the advertising revenue and increasingly also the interaction itself. And this way they kind of raise a tax on everything that is sold on the internet. And like parasites, they suck the money out of private business and they're not even paying taxes. And everyone is exposed to their arbitrariness. Okay, I ask. My phone has again wandered into my hand. This time the kangaroo is not going to place it back on the table, but puts it into its pouch. Some of these platforms have these crazy workarounds. Link in the bio, says the kangaroo. This is like asking someone where to go, and they say, well, the path is in the atlas. A link is not an Easter egg that you should have to search for. A link is supposed to be where you need it and not in a stupid bio. And most people don't even want to make these 2 clicks, and even those that go to this trouble end up in the in-app browser where you see the free world, but in truth you're still in the yard of your digital prison. Well, if you turn into an organic lemonade bottle into something where you put a QR code and you could say a link in the organic lemonade, pay attention and don't pun. This is just the tip of the iceberg, or to put it nicely, outlinks are a low-hanging fruit. There is no good reason why politics shouldn't demand that they should be allowed. They should demand it today. How about phishing and spam mass? Thank you that you give the reason that big tech likes to give. If big tech were really about that, interested in that, there would be no reason to ban outlinks. No, this is obviously an abuse of monopoly, and it only is beneficial to the platforms themselves. More traffic means more money. I wonder whether the camera would notice if I would secretly rummage around for my phone in its pouch. Then the thought shocks me.Maybe I'm addicted. I say, everyone's addicted. That is one of the other problems that I come to later. But I am a fan of the right to to links, a German pun. Many people are a fan of right rather than left. Yes, because they don't want any taxes. I've taken my crisp bread into my hand, and I keep sliding my thumb left on it, but it doesn't give me the same kick. Okay, my goldfish, says the kangaroo, I realize I have overstretched your attention span. I will use the next opportunity to come back to this. But remember, big tech is not the Rebel Alliance. We are the Rebel Alliance, or we have to find this air vent through which we can blow this whole thing apart. I'll put my head back on the kitchen table. All right, I say. If you're finished, you'll find me here. So that was the first text. What was that? I ask, after I've taken a big sip from the bottle, thirsty as I was, that was next to the sink. Oh, says the kangaroo. That is the detergent where the package was ripped. So I remember I was going to write detergent on the bottle, but I forgot. Oh, shit, I say, surely this is poisonous. What am I supposed to do now? Don't be afraid, my friend, says the kangaroo. I have the solution, because I found this video on the internet. Immediately I'm afraid. I'm super skeptical, I say, but the kangaroo shows me a video on its mobile where Mark Zuckerberg is begging for Donald Trump's grace by promising to abolish fact-checking, and he tries to portray this as a heroic fight for free speech on the internet. After video, I immediately have to vomit into the sink. Problem solved, says the kangaroo. Wow. That was so disgusting, I say, and I don't mean the detergent or the vomiting of it, but still I'm going to wash out my mouth, and I drink a sip of water, and then I have to burp, and something very wonderful then happens. Oh, see, I can burp soap bubbles, I say. The kangaroo is slowly watching a soap bubble floating by. Find it. We'll put this on Instagram. And we find out that Mark Zuckerberg has secretly put detergent into the drinking water all around the world because as a child he was never allowed to have soap bubbles. Oh, that is complete nonsense. Well, so what? There are no fact checks, right? Oh, true. I burp another soap bubble. The kangaroo films me. Maybe we should watch the Zuckerberg video once again, it proposes. Actually, I think it's quite funny with these soap bubbles. No, not as a vomiting agent, but there are a few more interesting details that I would like to point to. So we watch the video a second time. Look at the watch that he's wearing. This is $900,000. What? Do you know why he's wearing it? Why? Well, imagine you are the third wealthiest person in the world, but somehow you feel forced to produce a vomit-inducing video in which you you lick the shit off Donald Trump's shoes, but the others don't let me. Well, that is only semi-believable, right? To show that you're not this embarrassing victim that has been locked into the cupboard, you wear your $900,000 watch. Cringe. Absolutely. For this video, the young people have actually invented this word for that. Maybe he really always wanted to do it this way. This is cheaper for him too, and his digital oligarchy bros will now feel empowered to just drop their masks. The kangaroo wonders. Maybe you're right. Maybe the guy has always been an asshole. Oh, you almost have to hope that, I say. Huh? Well, imagine you're actually the very nice guy and only by mistake you broke the world. That would really be a burden on myself. The kangaroo watches his phone again and opens his eyes. Ah, look, just under your soap bubble video. You've posted it already. Yes, of course. Someone writes that if you swallow detergent, you shouldn't burp it, and the bubbles could then get into your airways and block your breath. So you could have really suffocated. That is only half funny, I say, and burp another soap bubble. Isn't there a metaphor in this? I then ask. No, says the kangaroo. I don't think so. Yes, sure. The detergent is the toxic information waste that politics and the media produce, and the social media are the vomiting that turns this rubbish into bubbles from which our society suffocates. Says the kangaroo. Maybe I was wrong. Never underestimate the ability of a small artist to find a metaphor in everything. Thank you. Right. One last one before we start with the conversation with the weird title Brainship's Crystal Motorway.
My phone rings. I can't make out the number. So it's a clear case. Hi, kangaroo, I say. Hi, dry nose, the kangaroo replies. Tell me this. If my nose is dry, then why is it wet all the time? Allergies. Well, probably. I clean my nose and ask, what's up? Advertisement, the kangaroo replies with a funny voice. Would you like a refreshing sip of soda? Go grab some at the kiosk at the corner. There's this new thing, including some sort of truffle soda. What's that about? Well, just imagine, the kangaroo goes. If there was advertisements in your phone calls, imagine all your phone calls being recorded and your personal information being analyzed so that it could play out targeted ads in your advertisement. The kangaroo goes again. Yes, you easy victim of the advertisement industry. You need brain chips. A chip in your brain. Brain chips. Potato crisps in the shape of your brain. Get them at the kiosk at the corner. Kind of annoying, right? Yes, it is. We wouldn't allow that to happen, right? Rather we pay money. Advertisement. How great would an organic sip of soda be right now? Come on, I go on and complain. But you haven't bought it yet, have you? I sigh. Fun fact, the kangaroo goes, German people roundabout spend 30 minutes each day on the telephone. And so, and like multiple hours on social media. And so why is it okay there, but not on the telephone? Well, let me tell you, it's on social media, that's bad as well, but we're like the frog in the water and it slowly gets warmer and warmer and we don't notice it, right? Yeah, 100 points to you. Congratulations, you won. Advertisement. I hang up the phone. The kangaroo goes, I'm trying. What are you trying? I'm trying to wet my argumentative knives. And yeah, well, happy to help. The kangaroo looks pensive. Then it goes, if you were to produce crystal meth in your flat and then earn money from that, would your landlord be responsible for that? Of course, the proper answer is no. And it's the same thing on internet. If you've got the newest Taylor Swift album on your website, to download on your website, if you've, I don't know, threatened people with violence on the internet, or if you claim that a German minister stuck up sausage up his nose as a child in order to not feel that void between his ears, and that sausage ever since has been rotting away up there, or if you make false claims about other people or talk about that sausage in the minister's brain, then your hosting provider won't be responsible for your actions, just like your landlord won't be responsible for you cooking crystal meth in your apartment. So what are you getting at? Well, just imagine what your landlord would do if he took that crystal meth you produced and he would make money from it. And then at some point, the people would find out that like people in your neighborhood are really like in terrible shape. And so your landlord would go like, well, it wasn't me, right? It was Mr. Kling. Do you think he would like, not get sentenced for that? X, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, think about it. That's just the case for them. They're allowed to earn money by doing illegal stuff because they are allowed to legally monetize illegal content. You really have to shake your head about that, right? I shake my head. I remember my aunt. My aunt used to slaughter animals as a living. The kangaroo goes, so this story is true with your aunt, or like did you just make that up? Well, who knows? But what's true is that by minced meat, you can get lots of parasites. Well, anyway, if the digital platforms only want to be the landlords, then they shouldn't be allowed to monetize the stuff that's being produced in their flats. And if they want to do it, then they're not just landlords, then they're dealers. And then that illegal deal, they should be held accountable for that. It's not a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It's an analogy. That's important. It's important. There's a tradition to it. Jesus, or what? Well, that's your interpretation. All right, so your analogies are, you claim to like these social media companies should be treated as mass publishers, and then they should be held accountable for the content that's produced and hosted on their sites because they monetize that, and because people should be held accountable for what they sell. I want to answer in the form of an analogy. They claim to be a data highway and that the highway cannot be made responsible for an accident. But if the highway is made in a terrible, terrible way, then of course it's to blame for an accident happening. And then not just the highway, They're also the logistics company behind the transport of goods on the highway. And in other parts of the internet, we also don't accept this. Imagine Amazon selling crystal meth or crystal minced meat, which is even more deadly, and then not be held accountable for that. So between not-to-do lists and picture books, and Amazon would just say that's not something we've made, right? Yeah, of course, because all big companies just say we're not responsible for that. So why do you tell me that? You know I've written like 3 novels on this topic, right? Ooh, look at Mr. Big Shot who's written 3 novels. I don't read your text. I only read the text about me. So stop asking questions. Write down what I just said. So you weren't really talking to me? Through you, I talk to the people. Like Jesus through his evangelicals? That's your interpretation. Aren't you like kind of out of your mind? You've compared yourself to Jesus. No, you did that. And as an atheist, I don't believe that Jesus was God's son. Well, he was just this guy with great analogies. Kind of like you. Yeah, kind of like me. So, yeah, you're someone with great analogies. On Jesus' level, well, maybe a little bit better. So they're more like tailor-made to our time. Yeah, so better. I really like the sausage one. That wasn't an analogy, but that was the one I remembered. That's the one that's going to stick around. The kangaroo size. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's kind of a tough act to follow. Jetzt haben wir uns erstmal sortiert, sehr gut.
Yeah, kind of a tough act to follow, and now we're sorting some things out. We've got important topics to talk about, so thank you for sticking around. Yeah. All right, so yeah, they gave me a microphone. Thank you. All right, so we've got microphones, we've got seats, we've got topics. So now we want to zoom in into this campaign of which you're a part of, Save Social. And I want to start to give you the opportunity to give an overview of what this campaign's about. Well, just talk so much. You start, right? Yeah, so I have to say we're not the people who came up with the original idea, and they've gotten like 300,000 signatures so far. And so the idea behind Save Social is to raise awareness to become more independent from these big social media platforms, right? And this, this bad feeling that we all have to put that into a text, and then to actually promote that we should have non-profit or social spaces for the common good, so that we can have a better digital world, and then we can communicate with each other without Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg changing the rules on us overnight. Yeah, and there's 10 points that Save Social wants, and I think we can look at them as on the one hand, it's this part of big tech opening up, for example, linking out to other sites, what I just mentioned. And then another part is strengthening democratic alternatives. So, for example, enforcing state or state-funded actors to be present on an open platform. Yeah, so let's dig into those a little bit deeper right away. But first, this is part of a campaign that, Wikimedia has been working on those topics for quite some time. It's been in Republica talks for quite some time. So why start this campaign now? Yeah, well, I think this momentum of Mark Zuckerberg, what was his intro in the video? Hello, hey fans, and showed off his watch. And at the same time, was like, don't panic, we're gonna, allow racism, discrimination, we're gonna change all of our content moderation rules and fire all our fact checkers. And I think a lot of people realized then that a major part of our lives is run on his infrastructure, and that constitutes a problem for us. And so this bad feeling that we get from that, it was always there, but it became larger and larger then when these tech oligarchies started working together with a fascist. And so we found that we in Europe need an enforcement of our democratic rules against these big tech giants. Yeah, and so I want to add to that there have always been these waves in the last few years where people joined the Fediverse. But yeah, I think this year it's reached a whole new level. And so it's not just this history, the story of Star Wars with this one air event in the Death Star. I think we need lots and lots of attack points like that. And Safe Social is part of that. It's an element in this fight. And I think, we're not the people who initiated this campaign in the first place, but we're also supporting this campaign. And we hope that more and more people take this step with us. Yeah, so you work in different formats on this topic, right? Mark, can you add why you, as an author, as an artist, why is this important to you? I saw that you, in your works, you also deal with these topics, right? So maybe you're also an important translator for these topics for another form of public audience. But you also want to people who do the same work as you to do this activism for digital topics?
Well, yeah, actually, as an artist, of course, you seek a certain public, you depend on it. And at the moment, you mostly find them with the big tech platforms. And when things like this then happen, when some guy in Silicon Valley arbitrarily takes the communication paths that so many people have and changes them around, then that is so obviously undemocratic and a problem that every person in public life should cry out, really. I've lost the first part of the question now. Maybe I've answered both anyway. Okay, well, at the same time, I believe that what surprises me is that this was the instigator, this was the reason, because haven't quite digested the loss of Twitter ourselves here at Publica. So we've seen how one person has so much power to determine the way his platform works. Well, I don't want to say that that was the reason, the incentive. I have been looking at this for years, but this has been yet another very strong example how dystopian this whole thing is. Our current communication structures, if you would describe them 50 years ago in a science fiction novel, that would have been an Orwellian dystopia, and we're right in the middle of it. We can hardly see it because we are in the middle of it, but it is absurd. Well, and then let's look about the demands and mostly about the alternatives. What are the requirements and what should they look like? You are part actually of the alternative, and what are the requests, the desires that you have at Safe Social? What are the ideas? What would the better internet look like, and how can it be built? Well, Mark has actually alluded to it already. Part of the problem is that it's not just enough to say, hey, just go to the free alternatives, because there aren't free alternatives for all digital tools. They have to be developed. And they don't just grow on trees. They depend on they have to be built by people. These people have to be able to live off that work. And it needs financial support. Quite concretely, the social media infrastructure needs people that pay for it. And if we don't want it to belong to anyone, then, well, you can then consider if you use a crowdfunding model or whether you say it needs state structures, EU-level structures, but the money has to come from somewhere, and there are options for that, and these have to be looked at and approached. And the other thing is it needs regulation. You've said that already as well. There are these lock-in effects. Why should I change from a large platform to another where there is hardly anyone around, or where I have to recreate my whole social graph? So it needs regulation for that. This has to be compulsory. Platforms have to be opened, and has to be said, no matter where you go, you can take your data with you, and you feel free to continue. Yeah, actually, this is so important an issue that to leave a large platform would be so much easier if I could take all my contacts with me. So actually, in a best-case scenario, I would say content is decentralized and the platforms are just the way in which I access that content. And if I would then see, okay, Instagram isn't working for me anymore as an app to look at these things, then I would go to another app but can look at the same content again. And of course, that is not what they want. They lock you in. So everything that opens things up would have to be regulated by or enforced by the EU. Adversarial interoperability, the idea that I can take my data from one platform to the other, integrate it, whatever, and then determine myself where I host it and where I want to play it. That is one of the core demands of Safe Social. And there were some critical voices about this concept. This concept of interoperability could also be used by the large platforms to kind of enforce more privacy-oriented platforms to share this data. Mark, Uwe, what would you say when these demands are kept? How can we ensure, Markus, how can we make sure that this works in the right way? Well, by enforcing the large platforms to be interoperable and the small platforms to use this if they want, but not have to. And that is the debate that is reflected in this debate. There were these fears when the EU, in the context of the Digital Markets Act, defined these very large gatekeepers and made sure that at least in messenger services, interoperability has to be created. In practice, that means that iMessage and WhatsApp now have to create interfaces or supply interfaces. And the fear was that Signal and Threema then would have to exchange data with Meta. And of course, that is not what they want. You don't want to the metadata, the connection data, to be handed over to Facebook into their throats. But the solution is, well, Signal and Threema can choose whether these interfaces that WhatsApp has to supply, whether they want to use them. They can also say, no, we'll stay in our safe system to protect our data. But other smaller competitors can then create new opportunities to become interoperable with WhatsApp. So in practice, this doesn't quite work yet because there are transition periods. But we see that the dominance of WhatsApp exists. 90% market share in Germany. Who has no WhatsApp in Germany? Oh, this is more than 10%, but, well, maybe it is 20% here. So this dominance has to be broken at first so that we can get a better world because, of course, many people in their private lives do use just a single platform. And one way of doing this is to compel the platforms, the large ones, to be fairer through regulations, give them new rules, and then create new spaces and try to get people to move there. Now, there is this beautiful Fediverse that we are speaking about, but for now it hasn't quite succeeded. You've talked about rebuilding the social graph. You feel when you go there you have to start from scratch, from zero, and on Mastodon and co. And the feeling is that it's kind of lonely there. And how do you work in the various forms that you do work in to get the people there? And what does Safe Social say about that? Well, I can talk from our experience. A few years ago, we set up our own server for at least our employees to use. And this year, we actually tried using large organization with a broad reach and say to them, could you imagine if you don't get this done, we could support you technically through moderation. What do you actually need? And that is the first question. What does it actually need to make this step? And the second issue that I think developed very well in this year is that there is an organization now, the Mastodon organization, that in the future will promote this much stronger. And I think that is a great opportunity, because I think it does need an organizational background to provide this kind of infrastructure. And at least from our experience of 20 years, we can contribute and say what it needs to build communities and maybe also legal structures in the background that sooner or later will surely be necessary to address these questions. So there are spaces in this internet that are still these good spaces and that exist and that are ready to help. Absolutely. And of course, we need more of those. And still, you feel this kind of disconnect, don't you? Expectations are high and everyone's flocking to the next platform, such as Blue Sky, where the decentralized alternatives are not really looked at. Well, Blue Sky has this kind of Twitter position. You know what I mean, right? Yeah, but, well, Blue Sky had the advantage that the Twitter user experience could be felt there. It was closer because it was a kind of side thread of Twitter. And we had this situation when Elon Musk took over Twitter. Many then actually did jump into Mastodon. Many didn't find the entrance, others did. And the natives at Mastodon wanted a different culture. There were cultural differences that were felt. They didn't want the real-time communication that Twitter had, but the Twitter refugees did want that. And there were certain communicative differences. And many then changed over to Blue Sky because they felt, oh, this is like Twitter, but only without Elon Musk, so to say. And I actually believe we have this challenge of the chicken and egg problem now. Of course, we take refuge in where many people are. We like to communicate using platforms or infrastructures that are easy to use. And in both cases, the Fediverse isn't quite where it should be, or would it have to be, where it would have to be. But that is our fault too, because we would have to give it a chance so that people go in, and we need to ask for support to make it easier to use, so to say. Yes, it is on us, but it's also a design question, and to make it more beautiful, it takes money, and there are concrete demands for that too. And you've talked about this, the investments. How should they be? We at Seefeld have demands for the investment. Yes, in an ideal world, the public broadcasters would finance this, because if we would invent it today, you would use technology neutrality and put that so much more in the foreground than it is in the budget of public broadcasters at the moment. I believe that 0.001% of the budgets go into public spaces incubator projects, which is a very beautiful project, but it's just a drop in the ocean. And in a budget of 9 billion that public broadcasters in Germany have. So we would then have a certain distance to the state, but we do not live in an ideal world, sadly, so we have to take a different approach and strive for these 0.01% to be increased. And also we need innovation support. For example, we have SWR Labs, SWR being one of the public broadcasters, the one for the southwest of Germany, and the Media Lab of Bavaria, with them together, had 6 fellowships. And so a few tens of thousands of euros of innovation support we have. let us make 6 million out of that, or 60 million. And with that, you could bring about a lot of innovation that would be open sourced, and where those that are doing this in their spare time now would have the opportunity to create this better infrastructure and have it paid for, where you would have the designers make the UX so much better, so that we would all find the entrance and provide the infrastructure that we would really like to use. Someone has to operate the service. It has to be somewhat quicker, so that real-time communication works, and so that we have the Twitter experience in the Fediverse, actually. Yeah, a bit of an applause is very much welcome. And let's ask our digital minister that was here today what he thinks. Okay, we'll open this for questions and comments from you soon. We'll get to you with the microphone. So please add to this if we find the time. Well, everything you said, but it's not just about the infrastructure. It's also important that the actors are present, and I think there is a real gap, a huge gap. Both the German federal government, it's just not explainable how you can remain on X and not be on Mastodon. Maybe we could make it a new condition for being a partner at Republica. You have to have a Mastodon account. Well, we showed them Mastodon today and explained what it's about. Okay, we have different approaches. Another question before we open for questions. I still have the feeling, a kind of hesitancy, both in politics, both in Germany and the EU, to seek out and think about these alternative spaces. We've been wanting them for such a long time, and I would like to ask what else you would wish for. There are people like Leonard Dobusch who introduced great concepts here at Republica, how these spaces should look like. So we had a Netflix culture space. Where are the platforms that are decentralized and have local offerings, a jazz concert from the pub next door, an exhibition next door, a performance in the youth center, and whatever else is there in terms of cultural offerings, and make that available on the net. So much space that we don't have, and there is such a hesitancy to think about these spaces and build them. Again, how do we get a larger push, larger understanding, including at the European level, so that they dare creating these new spaces? And what kinds of spaces would you wish for? Well, maybe we'll start. And Mastodon, of course, has ideal conditions for this. These local servers could exist. You have combined something like neighborhood.de with Mastodon, everything you said. It has to be made easy for the people to have their local instance that they can join, not have the difficulty of getting registered, but to see, okay, if I live in a small place, I would go to that place.social, and I have the advantage of then seeing what the local press used to do, which now has gone down the drain through the internet. So to see what is actually happening in my small area, in my small town, and that advantage to play that and use it, that is what I would wish for. What kind of spaces would you also wish for? My Fediverse instance is actually northern.social, north translated into English, and that is exactly why I have a connection to the north of Germany. And yes, you can think this very much more closely. You can think in terms of neighborhoods, small cities, and the more open it is, the more accessible it is, the more attractive it will be. And I don't want to take this too far, but maybe we need such spaces against the polarization that we see in social media today. There is this age theory of filter bubbles. Then we start quarreling. We use the wrong spaces to meet others, and so social connections have to be created through other means, through local networking and this kind of thing.
Auf jeden Fall Orte, die
Yeah, I want spaces that are interoperable, that have open standards. Like everyone who develops an app right now that isn't interoperable missed the queue. As an artist, I really want social media to work like podcasts. So what I mean by that is I don't have to, upload something on 10 different platforms. I just publish my podcast somewhere centrally, and then I register it with certain platforms. And once I publish my video, for example, it automatically gets uploaded or gets seen on all those platforms from the central source. So we don't have to do the work of put our content on yet another platform, but it just happens automatically. And that would solve this problem of having to, you just can't be present on every platform all the time. And we have to inverse that thinking. Yeah, so kind of the opposite of single sign-on by Meta. So questions, comments from the audience. One hand was raised straight away, to the right, and then to the left. Good evening, thank you very much. I really like this initiative, and I think more people should sign up for it. But there's something that bugs me about it, like the city of Cologne. They declared themselves internet capital of Germany or something, but only invested like 2 million euros. And so while they were trying to catch up with Berlin, Berlin is like, keeps on developing itself and keeps on going forward. And I think that's the same case here. If we want to make Mastodon nicer right now, but at the same speed, with the same energy, like Google and Facebook will increase their own products and make their products nicer and have more offerings. And so I'm not sure if just to make this nice, I don't think that will work. So please encourage me that it will happen anyway. Yeah, so I don't know if you've used Facebook in the last few months, but I feel like it hasn't gotten nicer in any way. It's just more and more unfriendly towards users. And I think they have a problem that they want to, make us addicted and bind our attention. And so it's not made for us. And so there, the Fediverse can have advantages that big tech can't, because Fediverse products are made for you as a user and not for the ad industry. And if we can use those advantages, and I think it's possible to have a more user-friendly alternative, and that draws more and more people in. But what we need for that is to break up those big networks in order to counter the network effect. Can I just add to that? I mentioned that earlier. There's not this single action that we can take to solve all our problems. So Safe Social, that's not enough. We need money, regulation, and not to be glossed over, the will of all of us to just say, well, it's not as great as it can be, as it will be, but I'm going to go there anyway. I'm going to do it anyway, because it's more important to leave big tech than to have the perfect product in front of me. Hi, Thorsten Sebing. I'm a journalist. Great cause, Save Social. And what you just mentioned, we need more and more building blocks. And to think of this matter in a more interdisciplinary way, and online and offline. Let's combine these things. So we need third spaces, right? And we need to create more of those. And I think there's some possibilities here, and I don't want to go on for too long. But one story that Mark Zuckerberg promised 10 or 15 years ago, that you would be able to monetize your content if you were to put your content on his platforms, that never became reality, right, for individuals. And it's kind of neoliberal, but maybe there's a chance for the Fediverse to actually enable people to monetize the work that they put into those platforms. So, for example, on third spaces, you could have table tennis, or you could do something with schools, just as a thought. I want to add a little bit to that. I think we have to be very, very careful if we want to introduce ads into the system, because I think ads are like the root of all evil that turned Google, Facebook, and the others into into the thing that it's become. And so, as someone I'm a content creator myself, and I put my content on Mastodon, and I do that to reach people. But of course, I also gain something from that, because then when I publish tour dates, then I have my followers and they see those dates, or when I, talk about a new book that's going to be published or something. And I think that has to be enough, because the problem with technology oftentimes isn't the technology, it's how it's monetized. And as soon as we start introducing ads, then we're talking about attention. And then we, again, have this reason to bind attention, to draw people's attention. And I feel like, that's sort of a slippery slope. I very much agree with you, and that's also, a principle, for example, at Wikipedia, that we don't have ads. But I don't think that was quite the case with what was said. I think it's more of this combination of digital and analog worlds. We have a program called Local Spaces, where the Wikipedia community can meet up regularly. And I think that's a valid point, that humans want to connect in the real world and not just in digital spaces. And of course, something like that is more easily implemented in a common open space rather than in a privately owned one. Yeah, okay, so one more. Susanne Borath from the ClickSafe Better Internet for Kids initiative. So talking about advertisement, we need regulation, we need tech, but I also think we need ads for the Fediverse, we need ads for Mastodon, right? So I think a lot of people, for example, big soccer clubs or well-known public figures, but they've just stated we're leaving X, and it was never we're leaving X and we're going somewhere else, and so the alternative has not been talked about enough. So it's important to invest into tech, into regulation, but we also need to promote Fediverse, Mastodon, and other alternatives to big social media platforms. And so, advertisement not on the platforms, but advertisement for the platforms, advertising the fact that alternatives exist. And so we're all specialists here, right? We know about those alternatives, but the broad public doesn't know about it. And so we need to invest money and energy to make it more well-known to the public. So thank you. Marcus. In a perfect world, we would force the public broadcasting to not promote any sort of surveillance capitalism networks on their programming, right? Okay, 3 more short questions. A small short comment. So, Mark-Uwe, you said you'd like decentral content, but me as a content manager, that's sort of. But you don't get like proper communication or feedback, right? If you have so many decentralized channels, then where do you go to actually talk to people? And so I feel like that's the problem as well, this defragmentation of communication and feedback online. Do you go to Threads? Do you go to Blue Sky? Do you go to Mastodon? Where do you have the same discussions on all platforms? Or so that's to reply to that, if it's open, then. For example, I now use tools with which I can put my content on multiple platforms at the same time, and I have a central view on all the feedback, on all the comments that I get on my content. And so if we have more and more openness on digital platforms, then we can have these more and more tools that enable like a back and forth, proper communication over multiple platforms. And so I think there might be solutions for the problem you've just mentioned. Stefan Kraude from a university in Germany. So, for example, if you open X right now, on the desktop version, you also get this like promotion for the Fediverse, and Truth Social, apparently, they also they claim to be Fediverse. So what about that? Well, Truth Social actually, I think, is based on a version of Mastodon, but that doesn't talk, is not federated. It doesn't talk to other servers using the same software. And of course, all the other servers said, we don't want to talk to them. And I think Truth Social, it's this giant scam, right? From the Trump environment. They just use a free Mastodon version and then have all these people paying for it and to put content there. But it's not automatically federated. Hi. I want to ask, there was this wish for public broadcasting Fediverse platform, right? And I think one of the major labor being done by platforms is content moderation, right? And how could content moderation done by public broadcasting look like? Well, just like it happens on Facebook, right? I think, that's the fees we all pay, by which the public broadcasting companies pay content moderators. And so we could do something like that on open platforms, or slowly shift over to new platforms. All right, one last question. So you've had this nice image earlier of people not finding the door to the Fediverse. So I think there's some trust issues, right? Where do you go? On which server do I want to use? How do they treat my data? Of course, you can open your own server, but that that's a huge step. So what about that? So I think for 40 years, we've had this great system called email. You can host your own mail server, but you can also go to small companies like mailbox.org or Posteo, and you can give them €1 per month, or you can go to surveillance companies like Gmail or GMX or something like that. And you can go to all these different places and use email. And I think we have similar models in the Fediverse. You can go to Digital Courage and get your own Fediverse instance there for a few bucks. And that someone gets paid to actually take care of your server. Or institutions like Wikimedia, they pay admins to run servers for social media, open social media platforms. And so it's not just a hobby project where people just give up after 3 months because they're find out it's too much work. So if you haven't done so, you can go to the main hall and gather more information on the Fediverse. So thank you very much to the three of you, and please a big round of applause for our panelists.